With most preachers, I talk too long, so I apologize. Next week, I'll be here on time, maybe. I'm like, the pressure. There it is. Here's what I know is I think oftentimes, like, we have great men's ministries, we have great women's ministries, but often, right? In a world that says schedules should be go, 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 how many of you have kids? Raise your hand. So oftentimes what happens is just what I call a drift. There's a drift. This is not, I'm going to kind of give you my syllabus of this group. This will give you some tools later down the road, but this is not going to be crisis counseling. This isn't going to be group counseling, because I don't want you to get weirded out that I'm going to ask you something. But if I like interactive groups. Understand this, we are online. You are Facebook Live. So whatever you say is going to the netherworld, all right? So we want some feedback. I'm going to ask you some questions. I'm going to ask you. And so one of the ways that we get better as a church, and a lot of things wrong, right? This isn't going to be that. What this is going to be is I'm going to learn things from Phil that I didn't know. I promise there's somebody else in this room. If they aren't currently going through it, they will have gone through it, or they're getting ready to go. This group, I'm like blown away by the amount of people that are in here that are wanting to get better in their marriage. God, you created. Thank you, God. This is also what I know, that we're gonna peel some scabs off. We're gonna say some things that the marriage, and that God, that when we come into your word and your will and your covenant, that our marriage can't help but get better, and open our hearts to receive. In Jesus' name, amen. So we got a table of contents. Some of you may look at this book and be like, oh my, is we're going to have fun. I want you to have fun. Marriage is supposed to be fun. It was created to be fun. God's fun, right? Right? He doesn't want us to have a life of misery. He wants us to have a life and have it more abundantly. That's marriage. Disney always stops at the wedding, because that's the perception of this happens through everything, and we're going to pick daisies, and our kids are never going to get in trouble. They're always going to listen to us, and they're going to love us. And you're going to have kids, and you're going to go out and you're going to buy some self-help books that are going to give you a lot of great info, because your children aren't the same. Your children have different personalities. Your children have different work. It takes hard work to make a marriage work. And so my goal over this time is to give you some tools. I'm a tool-based counselor, and this was to give you a playbook. It's a bunch of tools that you can use. It's some things that you may ask, that spouses are going to talk to each other. And I know some of you honeymooners, you're all like, we talk 17 hours on the phone all night long. Right? I will tell you this. I have had permission to give stories from me and Cassie from some of the best of the best. Some of this is learned. A lot of it is from great, amazing people. Focus on Georgia and Colorado. Focus on the family bottom now, so it's no longer them, but it's still an amazing. They do crisis counseling, 90% success rate. And we're going to do some Dave Ramsey stuff, and I'm going to twist it. So some of y'all that I know are really good Dave Ramsey people might glare at me during that part, but that's all right. Of this 10 weeks, if you will put in the effort and do what the book asks you to do, your marriage will get better. It'll get eye-opening as well. About 4 times out of 10, you're going to blame me down the road, and I don't like it, right? And so for this to work, this is what I make you do. I make you commit for 10 weeks. That's 2 months and teaching, and I want you to commit to the homework that we're going to give you. And I know you'll have 1,000 reasons not to, and I know you'll have 1,000 cousins who say, I'm marriage. If you're watching online, you're going to need to sign this as well, because once you sign it on paper on purpose, action at the center of my marriage. Here's what you need to know. I don't care what your psychology books told you. We're going to use Scripture. Into what the Bible really says about marriage, it may push against some of you. But we're going to commit to put Christ and God do His job. We're going to talk a lot about this. But I know that right now some of you are sitting here are really glad that your spouse is here. Because part of your commitment is I'm going to commit to working on changing myself. Say myself. It's not your job to change. This is where most of you will fail. Because you're too busy. Well, Pastor, we were going to do the date night, and then, work called, and I had to talk to them, and you're going to give me 1,000 reasons. Again, I want your commitment that you're going to do the homework. Talk about. And some of it's going to hurt. I'd like to give you this pie in the sky prosperity that like everything's going to be gold dust for the next. Commit to all your homework. I will commit to 10 weeks to my marriage. On time, not distracted, no excuse. I want you to have done your homework. I want you to really, 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 really commit to digging in over the next 10 weeks. Okay, it's going to be difficult. How many workaholics I got? How many helicopter parents? Nah. Because we're going to talk about how your job is not the center of your marriage. We're going to talk about how your children are not the center of your marriage, but they'll leave. You know what? So in counseling, I typically counsel, I can almost put a timeline on it. I do pre-marriage, right? So year one, I mean, what can you really have a problem with at year one? You're still in love. You have a lot of problems at year one. Spend a lifetime changing personalities. We've spent a lifetime being a chameleon. Like I know how to act when I'm around my church people. I overlook each other's faults to where when you get married, that changes at some point. You know what? That strong, silent type when you were dating, the party. She's the one that never stays home because she's out with her girlfriend, right? And so year one, kind of the time, it's that way in jobs, it's that way in marriage, it's that way something in the back of our brain. We have a 3-year commitment. At 3 years, people putting a ton into it, right? And maybe I could just kind of bow out now, but it's crazy. Year 3 is a tough one. It's the commitment, and the little kids that you thought would never get in trouble are now 2. And you're like, God, what did I do? There's year 18 to 20. I get as much counseling when people are older, and baseball practice, and basketball practice, and football practice. I'm going to practice 5 days a week, and I'm going to play games 2 days a week. And then, well, I've got a career, right? I've got a career because I have to make money to provide, to do what I want to do. So I'm going to 18 hours out of a 24-hour day. I'm going to the ball field with my kid, but I'm not engaging with my kid because I'm really on the phone with work. And we'll swap up every now and then because, you know, I want to have a conversation with my daughter every now and then, and she wants to have a conversation with my son, so we just switch up, right? And so they're going to move out. It is destined for a kid to move out and get married to their own, right? That's all biblical. So they move out. You don't know each other's hearts, wants, desires, hurts, hang-ups because you don't sit and talk anymore. What are you talking about? Your spouse. So we're going to jump right in, and we're going to hit it hard. We're going to jump in that into me. That's between you and God. I'm not going to take roll. I'm not going to check on you. What's going to work is you got to have some rules. If you've ever taken one of my classes, some of this is going to sound familiar, but here's why it sounds familiar, because you need to hear it again. And some of this stuff is brand new material. We're going to look at 9 lies of marriage, 7 keys to great parenting, stuff like that. It's not your job to fix them. You're hoping when you come to counseling that if I can just change one, well, you know what? If they would just help out a little more around the house, you know, we wouldn't fight. Okay. My wife asked me if I was talking about communication today because I forgot to tell her something. And she told me to take notes. Fix them. Here's the key to a marriage. It's really this simple. A healthy you and a healthy them equals a healthy marriage. Can't, won't, will not. It will not fail. For them, it's not your job to point out things to them. It's your job to internalize and say, where do I need to get better? Where do I need? And I'm gonna believe and trust that God's gonna do His job and work on my wife. Be the best husband or the best wife that I can be. I'm gonna be healthy spiritually. That's on me. I'm gonna be healthy. I'm just gonna be a healthy me. And then I'm gonna trust God. But here's a definition you need to realize. Everybody did. Everybody watching online, they have an expectation. You have 1,000 expectations every single day. You don't even lights, right? First world problems. Well, you know what happens when I walk in and I flip the light switch now? I'm frustrated because I had an expectation. That sounds so petty, but it's so true. When you open your refrigerator, what do you expect? Immediately going to get frustrated. When you walk out and you expect all 4 of your car tires to be inflated and one of them's not, that you don't even realize. When you came into your marriage, you had 1,000 expectations, what they were going to be like, met over the course of a marriage. As things start to not be quite what you expected in a marriage, you mean I had to work on this? But where a lot of marriage problems happen is it's a frustration. Gary Smalley says life is relationships, the rest are. So here's what I want you to do. I'm going to give you a couple of minutes. You have an expectation. You write down 7 characteristics of what you think a healthy and great. Talk to each other. I don't want you to ask each other what their expectation. What is yours? My expectation, what I think a great husband. Write down your expectation of what a great husband or a great wife looks like. And then I'm going to use this against you for the next 10 weeks. Right under that is going to be 7 characteristics of a great father and a mother. Because you have an expectations of yourself. I also want you to write those down. I know that y'all have to share a book. We'll get more books next week. 7 characteristics of what you think a great one would be. Perfect one. You ain't there yet. What's your number 1 characteristic of a great husband, David? Let me hear you. What's some of your expectations? What's a great wife look like? Submissive. Communication. There's you an expectation we're going to talk a lot about. Teacher. Being a godly example. Protector. Listen. Here's the crazy thing is y'all keep writing. I'm going to keep talking. Every one of these is an expectation. Every single emotion that you have is built out of 2 core emotions. Fear, core emotions. It is fear and it is love. What happens oftentimes is we have an expectation. We take it out on who? Our spouse. Oftentimes we're taking out on our spouse a frustration that 1,000 times it's not your job to fix them. It's your job to fix you. So you've got a list of expectations that I'm going to hold you to. A loving spouse who communicates. It's not me fixing your spouse. I'm going to ask you, are you being a Lord in your marriage to make yourself healthy? To make a healthy marriage is 100% on you. God created you to be. You communicate way too much. That may be a frustration. The healthiest you that God created you to be. Healthy you, a healthy them equals a healthy marriage. Unmet expectations. Control the thoughts, belief, feelings, and behavior of another. It's not your job to control your spouse's thoughts. A great husband is a great listener. Our responsibility in loving relationships. The foundational responsibility in loving relationships is personal responsibility. It's personal responsibility. We want to blame everybody for everything in today's culture. Every situation in your marriage, you need to look at it through the lens of one simple question. What can I do different to make it better? Because here's the truth of it. If I'm trying to make it better, if I'm humbly acknowledging where I can get better, and God is working on my spouse because I've allowed and I've trusted God to do His job, right? Because it's not my job to change my spouse. It's God's job to work on my spouse. So if God is showing me and I'm humbly moving forward to be the healthiest me I can be, to make the arguments less, to make a life-giving environment in my home better, to make a loving environment within my family better, if I'm doing everything I can and God's doing His job, which He does, and my wife is doing everything that she can, you know what we're going to do? We're going to meet more often where? In the middle, because we're walking towards health. We're walking towards each other. We're walking towards Christ, and we meet at the center in Christ. But if one of us is unhealthy, we've got one walking this way and you've got one walking this way. And then what happens? You're just playing chase. And here's often what happens when you get into that cycle is you've got one walking towards Christ trying to get better. You've got one walking away and away and away and away. And then about that time, this one gets frustrated and tired of trying, and this one gets healthy, so they start trying to bridge the gap. And then what you've got a seesaw effect. And it becomes dangerous and dangerous and dangerous because you never work through it. So it's 100% your personal responsibility. That responsibility is 100% mine. The health of me is 100% me. It's on me. If I want to get in shape, I have to exercise. It's not on my wife. It's not on my parents. It's not on my kids. It's not on my boss. It's on me. Your relationship in your marriage. Can I tell you something? You don't want to be married to yourself. The world's, God gave you a unique. Here's my question to you. What conditions do you put on your spouse that aren't yours to put on? What conditions do you put on your spouse? I guess this would be a better way to ask. What are you trying to change in your spouse that's not yours to change? Be honest. Write it down. You don't actually have to say this one out loud. So y'all look at each other, and I want you to tell your spouse what you're trying to get them to change. What? You mean I got to have communication with my spouse about this? Here's what I bet. I bet you've never actually told her what you're trying to change in them. I bet you haven't. You know why? Because I bet you've never actually acknowledged that you're trying to change them. But we do. What conditions do you put on your spouse that are not yours to put on? I want to hear that one. I want to hear that one. For all of those watching online, I just had a really loud laugh, and that's a lie. So. Oh, that is a lie. What conditions are you putting on your spouse? What are some things you're trying to change in your spouse? I've used this story before, but it's the most pertinent one. I think I even used it at church. I really need my wife to do laundry better. God, some of y'all are offended. I need my wife. She doesn't do laundry right. And so for a long time, we would argue about laundry. And here's why, because I can't stand wrinkles. I have a massive issue. I have a lot of issues. This one's massive. I can't stand wrinkles. So this is what my wife does. She goes, and we have 4 amazing children with piles and piles of laundry. So on top of working a full-time job, on top of taking care of 4 children and a 5th adult child, she does our laundry. And so she goes in there and she does load after load after load. And then what she does is she puts it in the laundry basket and she walks over to the couch and she dumps it on the couch into a pile and she goes and continues the laundry. She didn't complete her task. She's heard me say this. This was a lot of fights in our early days because she didn't complete her task. I mean, like, you made it all the way to the couch. Fold the laundry. I mean, seriously, you were here, 5 more minutes, done. But then I come back around, and I come in the house after a long day at work because, I get in about 5. My wife's done 43 loads of laundry, but there's 43 piles laying around the house. And I'm like, babe, my clothes are going to be wrinkled. And then usually when I say something like that, because see, her expectation is that she wants to be a mother that provides and does things for her husband and all of that. But now she doesn't feel like she's meeting her expectation because I've just told her that she wasn't. And so she's really frustrated because frustration is unmet expectation. And she's going to say something to me. And it's not going to be very polite. And I'm going to say, well, look, this is how you're supposed to do it. Just lay them out. Like, they wrinkle. And then she's going to pop off. And then somebody's going to call somebody a name because we've got hurt feelings because we have unmet expectations. See, I went into my marriage that my wife would do my laundry like my mom did. And my mom ironed everything. That was back in those days. She ironed everything. She hung them up, all of that good stuff. And then I went in the military, and it was before the new age military where they're sloppy and they didn't have to iron their clothes, but we had to iron ours. We had to starch them. And starch, like they stand up on your hanger starch. So then I got out of the military after having a mom that ironed every article of clothing that I had to the military. I expected my wife to do that. Well, here's the problem is my wife will never meet that expectation because what my wife realized is it's not even just wrinkles. I'm neurotic in that. Like I take my shirts to the cleaners now, and when I get them home from the cleaners, I iron them after they're starched because they fold them and then there's a crease. And that crease drives me nuts. And I either don't wear my seatbelt or I have to hang it in my truck because my seatbelt will create a wrinkle. And so when my wife saw me, because I told her, I said, well, if you're not, I'll just take my shirts to the cleaners. Well, what I just told her is you're not being a good wife because her expectation is to provide. So I've just taken a shot at her character and her expectation. Well, then I took my clothes to the cleaner. I came home and I ironed it, and she quit worrying about it because she just called me a name and moved on in life. But here's the truth of it: is we have expectations. We had a massive fight over that. And you know what I learned? Because then I went to Iowa and I saw her mom, and her mom doesn't do laundry right either. They don't. But you know what I figured out while I was sitting up there? Because her mom runs a boys' ranch, and they have about 10 kids. And what she does is she puts the piles because she's doing 20 loads of laundry. And actually, the boys come in and it's their job to fold and to hang and to do all that stuff. But what I learned is my wife was doing exactly what she was taught. So that was her way to do it. My way to do it looked totally different. But here's what I had to figure out. It's not my job to change my wife. So I stopped asking that question about laundry. You know what I do when I walk in and I see a pile now? A healthy me says, how can Scott make this situation better? So I walk over there and I give my wife a hug and I said, thank you so much for doing laundry. And I walk over there and I start folding laundry. Because now that's my job. Because it's my responsibility to keep harmony in my home and to make my wife feel appreciated for what she does. And it's my own neuroticness that can't handle wrinkles, right? My kids don't care about wrinkles. You ever seen them? Half of them look like Honduran hobo kids. I don't know. We do good to get out of the house with clothes on some mornings. But here's the truth of it. Is now I have said it's my responsibility not to create this tension and not to make my wife feel undervalued. So what can I do to make this situation better? I go and I just do what I have the issue with. Because it's my issue. It's not my wife's issue. If I ask my wife to iron, she will. I usually iron. I like to iron. It's weird. But here's the deal. It's on me to make that a better situation because I don't need to change the way my wife does laundry. I need to change the way I appreciate what my wife does. Oh, that hurts. So what conditions are you putting on your spouse that aren't yours to put? Next question, what expectations do you put on your spouse that aren't yours to put on them? Ooh. If you don't know the answer to this one, ask your spouse. This is a good time for y'all to have a conversation. Ask your spouse, what conditions do I put on you? You'll get some crazy answers. Well, I don't really put that expectation on you, do you? Is it perceived? Is it acknowledged? Because you have 1,000 expectations. You expect when you get home, do you expect your spouse to have dinner on the table? Do you expect your spouse to take the kids to school every morning? Do you expect your spouse to fill in your blank? What expectations are you putting on your spouse that are not yours to put? So we're going to take a pop quiz. In your booklet, there's Gary Chapman's love language test. It's about the next page or so. I want you to take that test. You've each got, add them up as you go. I know you're sharing books, but I want you to take this test. Because your expectation of what makes your spouse happy, you might be shocked. It may not have anything to do with making your spouse happy. So we're going to learn to speak in our spouse's language, because I know what makes me happy is not what always makes my wife happy. So as y'all are completing that, here's why we talk about this. So on the expectations of a great wife and a great husband, a great mother, and a great father, there's several key foundational expectations that we have. I've wrote down some of the most common ones after doing this over so many years. And the number one is acceptance. You see it in the green. It's what we've been talking about. We put expectations on our spouse that is not ours to put on them. God created them uniquely. The person you married, the person you dated and fell in love with is still the person that you married, but we spend so many years trying to change them into us rather than accepting them for who God created them to be. This breaks down into communication. This is one of the core foundations of communication because here's the deal. Your love language speaks a ton. And so a lot of your frustration is not being accepted. And it's because you're not speaking your love language. You're not speaking your spouse's love language. So on a bunch of these different love languages, one of my wife's love languages is gifts. Like she's the kind of person that goes and spends an hour in the card section and wants to find the perfect card and wants to find the perfect words. And then she remembered something you said that you wanted 14 years ago. And so she went and found it in Tibet and she's wrapped it and she spent hours and hours and hours on it. I believe gifts should all be gift cards. Christmas gift cards, everything a gift card. No thought, just give them a gift card, let them get what they want, and let's get past the dog and pony show. That's my belief. But my wife will spend all of this time and energies. I think it was our third wedding anniversary. If you go into my office, you'll see an awesome set of flowers. They're in a heart-shaped vase. Our anniversary, my wife called me. I was on my way home from work, and she said, hey, I kind of need to know what to wear tonight. I know you've got a surprise, so just at least give me a hint on what we're doing. And my brain went, were we supposed to do something tonight? And then I went, oh, it's my anniversary. And I said, yeah, babe. And I even told her, here's some clothes, kind of what we're going to do. And I'm like, oh, no. So I swung into it was Country Mart in Missouri. Here it'd be like swinging into a Publix, and I ran into the floral department, and I just saw the first vase, and it was a big heart, and it had some crystals in it, and it was 3 roses, and it was really pretty, and it shouted, I love you. And I got in my car, and I held on to that vase all the way home because I didn't want any of the water to spill out because I wasn't paying any attention whatsoever. I was just trying to get home, and I was trying to go through the Rolodex of things we could do to make it look like. And so I walk in, and I'm like, baby, I love you so much, and I hand her these flowers. Well, I didn't pay attention at all to the flowers. You can ask Cassie this story. They're actually funeral flowers that you put on a tombstone. They didn't have water in them. I thought they did. They were fake. They were fake, and they were funeral flowers. And I got this look. Like you didn't. I still have that vase of flowers on mine. Now, it has moved with me from Missouri to Texas to Alabama. And here's what I did, is my wife was frustrated because she had an expectation. Well, the crazy thing is we communicate differently. I'm not a gift guy. I really don't. I don't do gifts. I don't care if I get a gift. My Christmases, I don't care. I enjoy watching my kids. I have different love language. Mine is quality time. I need to spend time with people. But my wife is gift giving. And so if I'm becoming the best that I can be, I accept that her love language is different than mine. I accept that God getting her a gift is a big deal. So on birthdays and anniversaries, I make it a big deal. I put a lot of thought and I put a lot of effort, and I hate everything about it. But here's the truth of it is it was 100% my personal responsibility to move towards her and accept her for who God created her to be. Acceptance is the number one key, and it's also one of the top frustrations you'll have in a marriage if you don't accept your spouse for who God created them to be. So your job is to learn your spouse's love language. Your job is to learn your spouse's love language, because that love language, if your love language is words of affirmation, nothing says I love you. Nothing says I love you more than words of affirmation. Leave notes everywhere in the house. Leave it on the mirror. Leave it on the coffee pot. Shoot them a text. Just say, hey, you know what? You're awesome. Hey, oh my gosh, you know what? Thank you so much for doing the laundry. Thank you so much for running to the store. Man, you spent time. You got to be exhausted. You cook. Man, this is the best meatloaf I've ever eaten in my life. I don't know. Words of affirmation. Constantly words of affirmation. You may not be a words of affirmation person, but they are. Your job is to accept them for who they are, so you speak their language, because personal responsibility says, I'm going to make me a better me, and I'm going to speak in my wife's language. Quality time. This just means being together. Can I tell you what quality time is not? Sitting on a couch watching a TV show, both of you on your phones. That is not quality time. Quality time says, hey, we're going to go for a walk. Quality time says, hey, we're going to go for a drive. Quality time says, hey, we're going to go on a date. Quality time says, hey, we're going to spend undivided attention time with our spouse. Receiving gifts, we've already talked about it. Nothing says I love you like a well-thought-out gift, a Hallmark card, something like that. Acts of service. Can mowing the grass really be a love language? Yes. Can doing the dishes really be a love language? Yes. After my wife has cooked a big meal and she's worked all day, you know what she doesn't want to do? Clean the entire kitchen. But if I jump over there and I start cleaning the kitchen and she didn't ask me to and I have no expectation, like I'm not trying to, it's week 1, I won't get in trouble yet. I'll wait till at least week 3. I'm not doing it with an expectation of later in mind. Right? Maybe I'm just doing it. Why? Because I want my wife to feel appreciated. Because it's my job. It's my job to be a healthy me. And a healthy me says I'm looking out for the interest of my spouse. I'm not trying to make them who I am. I'm going to love them for how God created them to be. I'm going to move towards their personality. I'm going to move towards their love language. Acceptance is a huge, huge part of a foundational responsibility. The second one is this: companionship. I want a deep and intimate relationship. This might be the most dangerous in a marriage. Intimacy is not sex. Sex is an act of. Intimacy is two hearts beating as one. Intimacy is two hearts joined together just like this. Look at my hands. It's two hearts. No space in between, right? Christ in the center, two hearts beating as one. This is what happens when intimacy breaks. It's usually just a little bit at a time. I've got a lot of ball to go to. We didn't have time to do date night. We didn't really do church together. Man, life's been really busy. I'm so tired. I come home and I go straight to bed. I bring my work home. And before long, what was this is now this. And nobody wakes up and says, hey, I think today's the day I'm going to break intimacy with my spouse. But it's a slow drift. It's a slow drift. The dangerous part of intimacy, you know when danger begins? The first tiny separation. And here's why that's very dangerous, because you've just created space. You've just created space. You've created space for the enemy to get in. You've created space for the enemy to get in and create doubt. You've created space for the enemy to get in there and create pride. Well, if they just knew what I had to do, why is she all over me about what she had to do? If she just knew what if it wasn't for my job, we wouldn't be able to pay the bills. If it wasn't for my check. Y'all ever had that argument? Nope, just us? Okay. Right? You break intimacy a little bit at a time. Little by little by little, you start to drift. Here's the problem with drifting. When intimacy breaks, the enemy will fill that space. Well, I deserve to have people look at me. I deserve to have that cute little relationship, the little flirtation at work, because my spouse don't pay me no attention. I deserve that. Did she not know how hard I work for her? All she wants to talk about is kids. She doesn't appreciate me, so some little coworker comes walking by at the water fountain, and they take 5 minutes, and they appreciate you. They stroke that ego. They stroke that pride. And next thing you know, that little bit of space the enemy's got in with an inappropriate relationship at work, which now turns into a space this big, which is called an affair. And then affairs don't happen here. Affairs happen here. This much space. I've never met anybody in marriage counseling that looked at me and said, you know what, I think today is the day I want to screw up my marriage. I'm going to go out and I'm going to find me somebody to screw around with my spouse with, and I hope my kids stay mad at me the rest of my life. Nobody does that. It all begins with a small break in intimacy. It all begins with hey, we're having quality time together, but work called, and you know what, babe, I'm really sorry. Let me just grab this. I'll be just a second. It's just a little crack. It's just a little frustration. It's just a little unmet expectation. I want a deep, intimate relationship. Let me ask you an honest question. In your marriage, where is intimacy broken? Let's get real. Where's intimacy broken in your marriage? I don't want you to confess to the preacher. I want you to look at your spouse. This is the time y'all look at each other and you talk about it. Where is intimacy broken? You don't understand the question. Where are two hearts not beating as one? Where are things getting in the way of intimacy within your relationship? When was the last time you had a date night? Is sex a regular thing? If you're pre-marriage, it better not be. Are you able to finish each other's sentences, or do you not even share sentences with each other? Do you know what's going on in your spouse's world right now? Do you know if they're upset? Do you know if they're hurting? Do you know if they're scared? Do you know if they're frustrated? Two hearts. Where is intimacy broken? And then here's the secondary question. What steps can I take to fix it? Not what can my wife do better, not what can my husband do better to fix our intimacy. What steps can I take to bring intimacy back into my marriage? What steps can I take to take that space and to draw it back together? What are some steps we could take to rekindle intimacy? Again, intimacy is not sex. It's two hearts beating as one. What are some things we can do? What are some things y'all have done? Help me out. Because there's times that me and my wife, that intimacy get space in there. What can you do to bridge that gap? What is it? Acts of service. Okay. How can you bridge it? We'll get into that in just a second. Communicate. Talk. Like sit, talk. Turn your phones off. Medication. Medication works too. You can communicate. How much time do you spend in actual conversation with your spouse? I mean, literally, actual conversation. And then let me even go a little further. How much time do you spend in communication with your spouse, not about work? Now let me go a little further. How much time do you spend communicating with your spouse and not talk about work or the kids? Here's what I want you to do. I want you to go on a date. I want you to sit across from a table with no phone out. You're not allowed to talk about work or kids. Have a conversation. Me and my wife would stare lovingly into each other's eyes for quite a while. And you know why? Because it's going to be awkward. You know why? Because you haven't communicated with your spouse. You think you have, but have you? How was your day isn't rhetorical. How was your day is sitting down and listening to how their day was. How are things going? Hey, you seem really stressed. See, when two hearts are beating at one and two hearts are together, you could probably finish each other's sentences, but you know what you're also in tune with? Frustration, hurt, anxiety, aggravation, exhaustion. Because you can see these things in your spouse now. Because you're intimate and two hearts are beating as one. And I see my wife is frustrated when I got home yesterday because my two boys were acting a fool. And I walk in and I see frustration. And when we're intimate, two hearts beating as one, I know she's frustrated. And I walk up and I ask, I'm like, hey, babe, you okay? Hey, is everything okay? Yeah, I'm fine. No, I don't feel like you are. I see a blood trail leading down the hall. What happened? Right? But no, I'm able to see that. See, when I'm not healthy, though, and when we're not in intimacy and when our two hearts aren't beating as one, I walk in and I'm in a hurry because we haven't really had a conversation. So I usually just kind of blow in. I head for the fridge, grab a Dr. Pepper. I'm like, hey, babe, how's your day? Well, okay, good. And I'm gone because I've got the yard to mow, or I've got the chickens to feed, or I got the goat that never stays in his pen to catch. Right? But I'm not in tune with my spouse. I'm not intimate to hear that when she says fine, it's not fine. Because there's a difference in how's things going. Fine. How's things going? Oh, it's fine. But I'm not intimate enough with her because we haven't had a conversation. I don't know what's going on in her world right now. I don't know what's going on at work. I mean, are you stressed because you think you're about to get laid off? I don't know that because we've broken intimacy. And so you need to answer this question. This is part of your homework to go home. The conditions you put on your spouse and the expectations you put on each other with acceptance, but also in companionship. Where is intimacy broken? And let me tell you something. For those of you that say we have no brokenness in intimacy whatsoever, everything is going perfect, I would like to welcome Jesus to the marriage class. Because all of us have areas in our marriages that we can get better at. All of us have areas in our marriage when it comes to intimacy that I need to get better at. I need to listen to my wife better. You know when I need to listen to my wife better? When I've had a hard day and it's all about me all of a sudden. Because I don't know what her day's been. She had a hard day and now she's had to deal with the kids for 2 hours. But I've got to get better at listening even when I want it to be about me. I've got to be better at listening when she's hurting. Even if I'm hurting. Right? We can all work on this. We all have areas in our marriage. So answer that truthfully. Here's your other homework. Write this out to the side. I want you to know what your spouse's love language is, and every single day this week you're to communicate in that way. If it's acts of service, take out the trash, mow the grass, do the dishes, make the bed, fix something that she's been asking you to fix for 4 years. Do something, acts of service. If it's quality time, plan a date night. Surprise them with a date night. Go on a date night. Find the babysitter. Plan the everything, right? If it's gifts, go get her a gift. Get her a trinket every day. If it's words of affirmation, I want you to hide notes. I want you to give them text. I want you to make an effort to spend quality time with them every day. I want you to make an effort to get them a gift every day. I want you to make an effort for an act of service every day. I want you to make an effort for words of affirmation every single day. I want you to make a point. 4 out of 5 is not passing. 5 out of 5 is passing. Every single day, you are to communicate in your spouse's love language at least once in that day. Okay? It's not hard. You know what it is. The last 2 things are pretty big deals, key foundations to marriage when it comes to frustration and when it comes to making ourselves better, is we've got to take a look at what is success. All of us want to achieve or accomplish something, right? What is success to you? Success to you is different than success to me. Is success in parenting, here's you a frustration expectation, is success in parenting your child being the best the all-star major league contract may sign 8-year-old in Kentucky? Is that your level of success? Or is your level of success your child goes to school and just doesn't get suspended? Or is your level of success being a loving parent and being there for your child? Is your level of success that your kid's out in a sport and they're at least trying? What's your idea of success in parenting? What's your idea of success in your marriage? Is it to make it through a day without fighting? It's a pretty low bar. Define success. What in my life do I place value over my marriage? What in my life do I place value? Love my marriage? That's a typo. What in my life do I place value over my marriage? Do you put more value on your work? I love this statement. Well, if I didn't work, they wouldn't have what we have. That's arrogant. That's pride. Because God couldn't provide. God didn't give you the ability. What in my life do I place value? What in my life do I love more than my marriage? Is it my work? I value my work. So if work calls, my wife becomes secondary. If work calls, my kids become secondary. Maybe you play sports. I'm going to step on some toes. Is hunting more important than your marriage? I love to hunt. But what if your wife goes, hey, honey, we scheduled this 3 months ago. I'd really like to go hiking at Nakalula Falls, and it's open day of turkey season. Do you value hunting more than your wife? I always like doing that one. What about your friends? Do you place your friends over your spouse? I'm just got to go out with the guys. Just got to go hang with the girls. I just going to go to the ball game with the guys. Do you play sports? I've counseled a lot of marriages that play softball over their marriage. A lot. Adult softball. I'm at the field 5 nights a week. It's true. I've got career softball players. Marriage is going down the tank, but we're going to win a trophy for the Sokol Softball Championship. But I'm going to be divorced. What's that a trophy of, my divorce? Right? Define success. You're going to be frustrated if you don't know your definition of success. What is success? Is it that your kids are raised to be productive and amazing adults? Or is it so that everybody around you thinks you're an amazing parent? That's going to be a big deal later. Because the same things that my kids do at Walmart that I beat them for, I let them do at home. I let them roll vegetable cans down the hallway. But if they do it in Walmart, I'm going to beat you. Why? Because y'all are going to see my kids and y'all going to be like, that's the preacher's kids acting a fool in Publix. But they're doing the same stuff they do at home. Right? The boys are stomping on each other's flip-flops at home and in public because they mess with each other. And at home, I let it go. But in public, I'm like, you need to, I'm gonna, if don't make me pull this over. If I have to tell y'all one more time, and it has nothing to do with my kids flip-flopping each other in public, it has to do with because I'm really worried about what y'all will think because my kids are acting a fool. Because my level of success as a parent is to impress y'all, not to impress God by doing it His way, right? See, that's what I'm talking about when it comes to that. What's your definition of success? What's your definition of success in your marriage? Is it to get through marriage and die together? Is it to just survive this thing? Been praying for the second coming. God. Come on, Jesus. I need some revelation now. Right? But some of us do this. Like, okay, if I can just endure today, if I can just get through today without her nagging me, oh my gosh, if I could just get through the day without actually having to talk to him, if I could just get through the day, if I could just get through the day. So is your level of success, is your definition of success in your marriage that you go a day without fighting? What's yours? And that will tell you whether you're in a healthy relationship. Being super spouse and super parent is not the goal. Let me read that for some of y'all in the back. Being super spouse and super parent is not the goal. The goal is being fully devoted to following Christ. As a husband, as a wife, as a father, as a mother. It's a covenant, 2 hearts, intimately, beating as one with Christ in the center. That's my goal. Because if I attain that goal, if I attain intimacy in covenant with Christ, my marriage is healthy. Guaranteed. And you know what? If my marriage is healthy, you know who else is healthy? My children. Because it's a healthy, God-centered environment. So the goal is not to be the super parent. The goal is not for your kids to win all the trophies. The goal is not for your kid to win beauty walk. The goal is not for your kid to be everywhere, at every sport, at every time, at every event, at every function. Your goal is not to be super parent. Your goal is not to be super spouse. Your goal is not to be helicopter wife or helicopter husband. Your goal is to be fully devoted to following Christ. Because when you're fully devoted to following Christ and your spouse is fully devoted to following Christ, you what? Join in the middle in intimacy. Founded in Christ. There you go. Define your success. And then I want you to define God's definition of success of marriage. This is some homework. Because your definition, we said at the very beginning that we're gonna filter it through Christ and God's Word. And so this is what I need you to do. I need you to get in your Bible this week. Dust it off, pull it off the shelf, pull it up on your app. I don't care what you do. I want you to define success that God says is success of being a husband. What is God's success? Being a wife. What is God's success of being a father? What is God's success of being a mother? You're going to find it looks drastically crazy than what your success is. Because if we're truly doing it God's way, intimately with our spouse, with Christ in the center, we're going to be searching for success through the lens of God and not of the world. That will drastically change your communication. It will change your acceptance. It will change your companionship. It will change your intimacy by working towards success in God's eyes. It's a huge key of fixing where you're at right now. The last one we're going to look at today, what time is it? 7:30. The last one we're going to look at today is love. It's another core foundation that will cause massive frustration and unmet expectation. I want to be attractable to others. I want to be loved. We all want to be loved. I hear people sometimes say, you know what, I could just make it and die in life alone. No, you can't. You know why I know that? Because God did not create you that way. There were very few people throughout Scripture that were meant to be alone. Most of them prophets. And Paul. He wasn't a prophet, but his name started with a P, so that makes sense. Prophets and Paul. But when you look at the prophets and you look at Paul and then you look at the 345 million Americans, what you find is you're probably not in that 0.0000001%. You were created for relationships. You weren't created to do life alone. That's not a church cliche. That's not a t-shirt. That is an actual biblical principle of God. You were not created to do life alone. You were created to be in relationship. God gave you a spouse. Long before you got married, God ordained somebody to be in your life. He had somebody especially picked out. And some of y'all that are in blended marriages that were like, well, you screwed up the first time. No, I don't suspect it was him. But what the devil means for evil, God will use for good, right? So now God has brought somebody into your life that he ordained. And so either way you look at it, God has somebody specific for you. And so you were created to love and be loved. So here's my question. Where have I become unlovable? This is an inward look. This is going to be difficult because you're going to have to look in the mirror. Where have I become unlovable? Am I negative all the time? Am I Debbie Downer all the time? I'm going to tell you, in a world full of chaos, I'm just about done with negative people. Like, I may snap. Somebody could be like, hey, your shoe's not tied. Leave me alone! Can't I just be me? I'm so tired of negativity. We live in a world of negative. When I see massive negativity, that is unlovable for me. My wife is not that, thank God. But where am I unlovable? Am I always negative? Are my expectations, am I always hammering? Am I always trying to change them? Because that is unlovable. Because I'm really getting tired of you trying to change me, because can't you just love me for the way that I am? Can't you just love me for the way God created me to be? Where are you unlovable? Is it your attitude? Is it a pet peeve? I don't know. It could be anything. There's a million things. We all have areas in our lives that we would find ourselves at. I have become unlovable. Maybe I've become cynical. Maybe I've become unlovable in the morning because I'm just a grouch. Maybe I need to get up 30 minutes earlier. Where have I become unlovable? And then here it goes back to it's 100% personal responsibility. Here's what you need to answer is, what step can I take to change it? If I am unlovable in my home right now, my work, I may be married to my work. That makes me unlovable to my wife. I may put other people's problems over my own problems. I may put other people's situations over mine and my wife's situations. That is unlovable to my wife, because I am now placing people over her. That is not what God called me to be as a spiritual head of my house. Where are you unlovable? So what steps can I take? If I'm always on my phone, me and my wife have this agreement that my phone turns off before I walk in the door. I have a 20-minute drive because I live in just shy of Mississippi, otherwise known as Mormon Road. And from here to there is exactly, well, if I don't get behind a logging truck, it's 17 minutes. So for 17 minutes, I can walk out of the office and I can call anybody I want, and I can finish up, I can tie up, I can do whatever I want. But when I walk into that house, my phone has to be off. Because you know what's really unlovable for my wife is for me to walk in and not acknowledge her because I'm on the phone, or to look at her and go, oh, hold on just a second. Especially if there's something going on in my house, which is constant. We're a category hurricane at all times. I'm standing up here going through this book with you because I need to go through this book. But I can walk in and category 3 storm of 3 kids going at each other. I can walk in and she's just gotten home and they're erupting, and my daughter wants her to sign the 43 papers that Walker sends home every day to sign. And she wants them to sign them right now. But she can't sign them because my 2 boys are fighting, and they're fist fighting because they're teenagers now. And they're fighting over, I don't know, a basketball. And so I walk in, and rather than being able to step in and love my wife and be in intimacy with my wife and see that there's a problem so I can step in and now help handle the problem, I walk in on the phone with my work because that's really important. You know what, babe? I'm almost done. I've just got a couple of more things. I'm just going to talk to, hey, what? Yeah, I know I'll get right to it. But what I've just done is I've put my work over my spouse, and I've put whoever was on the phone with me over my spouse. And that's very unlovable. So what can I do to change that? I shut it off. I shut it off. If it's an emergency, I'll answer it. You can leave a message. You can text. But for a minute, when I walk in the door, my wife needs to be my singular focus. Because I can become really unlovable when I put things over her. Because then she becomes a frustration because now she's getting in the way of my work. Man, that's upside down. Unmet expectations. Unmet expectations. A negative mind will never give you a positive life. Did you realize that when we talk to our kids, we're not in parenting yet, but do you realize that our children, when they go to school, it's 20-1 negative to positive comments in their world? 20-1. That means they're going to have 20 people say something negative to them or about them. Did you know in your home it's 10-1 as a parent? 10-1. You say 10 negative things to your child and 1 positive thing. What does that look like with your spouse? I don't know that scenario because it changes. How many negatives do you say to your spouse over positive? Rather than walk in, see, one of my pet peeves is when somebody walks in the door with a negative. And a lot of times as a dad that happens because you walk in and they're waiting on you to referee. But I have a thing where I'm like, you know what? I just need to sit down, I need to look at you, and I need to tell you how much I love you. This right here, it can wait a couple more minutes. How much negative do you say to your spouse versus positive? How much negative do you say to your child versus positive? Here's what I want you to do. I want for every negative thing you say to your spouse, you have to tell them 2 positives. Do not get in an argument over this. And here's what I mean by that. Rodney's going to walk in the door, and Morgan's going to say something negative, and Rodney's going to say, now I want to hear my 2 positives. Don't do that. Don't do that. I don't want to have crisis counseling over the next 10 weeks. What I want you to do is it's your job. Say it, my job. I want you to say that again. Say it's my job to be the best me I can be. There you go. It's not your job to change them. So your job over the next week, love languages, right? Where have I become unlovable? Because I need to change me. I need to be a healthier me. Am I negative? Am I condescending? Where do I need to change me? And then what steps can I take to do that? And then here's what you have. You have a tool. You have a tool that if you will use, you will limit the frustration in your marriage, and your marriage will get better. This is Chapter 1. You have a tool. Where am I unlovable? How can I speak in my spouse's language? How can I move towards them and make me a better me? You now have a tool. You have 2 huge ones. I gave you 2 big ones right off the get-go. If you will utilize these 2 tools, you know what you're going to find? Less frustration in your home. You know what you're going to find? You're going to find less arguing in your home. You know what you're going to find more important than anything else is this right here. Whoop, intimacy. Because you're moving towards them and they're moving towards you, and you're going to meet right here in the middle. Because you're going to become lovable and you're going to build them up with positive instead of tearing down with negative. You're going to set aside things that are causing frustrations in your marriage, and you're going to live up to your own expectations. And you're going to answer these questions with each other. What expectations do you put on your spouse that aren't yours to put? What conditions do you put on your spouse? Where is intimacy broken? I want all of those answered by next week. Now, at the end of each chapter, we have what's called a great date. The number one thing that I find tool-wise that helps a marriage and creates intimacy, because that is what we are going to try to do, is rebuild intimacy in the marriage or keep it strong, is to date your spouse. So we've got a few more to go through in this chapter, but at the end of the chapter, it's called great date number 1. It's called progressive dinner. We'll hit validation, safety, trust, all that next week. But great date number 1, progressive dinner. You got to do it. You have to find a date time this week. How many of you have time to go on a date this week? Okay. I don't want anybody to look at me. How many of you have time to go on a date this week? Okay. So some of y'all still aren't getting this. Okay, let me take it this direction. Okay, we'll break it down this way. How many hours in a week, how many hours in a day do you have? Okay, everybody who has 24 hours in a day, please raise your hand. Okay, good. All right, no, we're going to keep going. How many days of the week do we have in a week? Okay, everybody who has 7 days this week, raise your hand. What's 24 times 7? It's 168, right? So, how many of y'all have 168 hours this week? Raise your hand outside of God coming. Okay, so, see, here's why I wanted to do this, because there's a lot of you that think you don't have time to go on a date. And you're going to give me 14 reasons that you can't go on a date. And some of that's going to be your kids. Your world does not revolve around your kids. Your marriage does not center and revolve around your children. It revolves around Christ and your spouse, because one day them kids are going to be gone. And I don't want you on my couch. So what time do we drop them off at your house? Negative. I don't like children. I'm just kidding. I love children. I don't really like babies, but I love children. So here's the deal. I got elders watching. I'm in so much trouble. Here's the deal, though. Everybody has the same amount of time. What you do with that time is your responsibility, right? You have the same amount of time as everybody sitting in here. So you are going to carve out a date because you made a commitment in covenant with your spouse and with God. I told you I was going to use that against you, and I'm going to keep using it against you. And one of those commitments was that you were going to utilize the tools, which means you have to do what we talked about, and that you're going to go on a date. You committed to God. He will make you a greasy spot if you don't do it. Got to go on a date. And I've even given you the date. I've given you the date. I don't care if you do it at lunch. I don't care if you do it at dinner. I don't care if you do it when you drop your kids off. I don't care when you do it. It's called a progressive dinner. I want you to go eat appetizers at one restaurant. I want you to eat a main meal at a second restaurant. I want you to eat a dessert at a third restaurant. Well, I don't have the money to go to all those restaurants. Okay, then make a picnic. But do it. Go eat an appetizer at one park, go eat a main meal at a different place, and go eat dessert at somewhere else. I don't care how you do it. Appetizer, Krispy Kreme, go buy a 79-cent donut, sit across the table, and eat icing with each other. God will be there. Then I want you to go to a restaurant, and I want you to sit down, and I want you to eat. I don't care what restaurant. You can go to a good one, you can go to an awful one like Taco Casa. I don't care. And then I know I'm on Facebook. I'm going to get lit up. Oh, I'm going to get lit up. Taco Casa is nasty, y'all. That ain't a date. Don't do it. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. And then I want you to eat dessert somewhere. I don't care. Go buy an ice cream sandwich from Publix for 79 cents out of the freezer section. I don't care. Go sit in the park and eat an ice cream together. And here's what I want you to do in this. I want your phones off. Oh, did I just hear an oh? Really? I want your phones off. Well, my work may have to call me. Let me ask you a question. I want to give y'all some reality. You ready for this? This is harsh, and this is me. I'm going to tell you something. If I die today, you know what this church is going to do? They're going to go hire another pastor, and he can have this class. He may like Taco Casa. I'd filter that out because that's not from God. But here's the truth of it. Your work, if you're not there tomorrow, they're going to keep on churning it out. But yet we're willing to sacrifice the one thing that we have for a lifetime. Right? Your work can chill for 2 hours. Your fantasy football can chill for 2 hours. Set your lineup during the day. Right? Your stuff can chill. Your social media accounts can chill. Your text messages from your buddies or your coworkers for the love can chill. Turn it off. Keep it on for an emergency with your kids if you have to. But tell them, unless there's blood, don't call me and your mama. But I want you to go on a date and I want you to turn your phone off. And then I even gave you questions to ask. Because I'm all about, I don't want you to have any excuses. You can't talk about your kids. You can't talk about work. You obviously can't get a phone call and you can't look at your phone. So what you going to do? If you could be any superhero, who would it be? If money were no object, what hobby would you do? What are your 2 favorite Bible stories and why? What character in the Bible do you most relate to? These are just conversation starters. If you got better questions to ask them. But you're going to date because you committed 9 more weeks. Every week you are going to have to carve out time to go on a date. And you have the same amount of time as the person to your left and to your right. You have time. You just choose not to use it. Cool? So answer the questions. 1 love language every single day. And ask yourself where you've become unlovable and take the steps to fix it. 1 step. I'm not asking you to fix it this week. I'm asking you to take 1 step. 2 positives to 1 negative to your spouse. So if you say something negative to your spouse, you have to follow it up with 2 positives. It's going to be so fun. I wish I could watch some of y'all this week. But you know what it's going to do? It's going to uplift them, and it's going to create a less frustrating environment. 2 hearts beating as one. Christ in the center. Can't fail. All right, let's pray. God, thank you. When I hear this stuff, it just makes me look at myself and go, I can't believe I'm teaching this class. Because honestly, I need work in every bit of it. I need work as a husband. I need work as a father. I need work moving closer to you. I need work putting you back in the center of our marriage. I need work to prioritize my wife over everything else as secondary. I need work at being a better father. So God, I just pray this week as we step out and we begin to use these tools, they won't come natural. They'll be awkward. There'll be reasons to quit. And there'll be reasons not to follow through. But God, I pray that your Spirit speaks into our marriage and allows us to see the value of the marriage way more than the value of anything the world has to offer. And that we'll prioritize our covenant with our spouse and with you. And at the end of this 10 weeks, we're going to give you all the glory, knowing that you're back in the center of our marriages. It's in your Son's name we pray. Amen.